In recent years, there has been a wave of content and content creators that have risen to popularity fairly quickly, largely due to clips and memes of them being shared around the internet. Some better, some worse, and some completely incoherent. But there is something completely lost on many, that being, regardless of how good it is, with very few exceptions, all of this content is part of a larger system designed to make you consume content. I know, mind blown, right? Not to entertain, not to enrage, not even to brainwash, but to simply keep you in a constant state of consumption for consumption's sake, even more so than previously thought possible. So join me as we discuss the destruction of both the human mind and the internet. So the first important thing to understand about this radical change in the way content is created and consumed is people's tendency to cast judgment depending on how things affect them in balance with how often they see or hear about them. This is largely speculation, but I want you to use your brain for a moment. If you can. Imagine for a moment you pass a park with a few trees, a nice flower bush, and some other plants every single day for a year on your way home from work. Perhaps you see a bird or a squirrel do something silly in the trees. Maybe you see a dog shit in the grass. Maybe you see a dead body. Then one day the park gets bulldozed and concrete is poured over it. How would you feel? I would wager for the most part that you would not be particularly happy about this development. You would be a little surprised to see the park bulldozed all of a sudden. You might even be sad. However you feel, regardless, is a result of associating yourself with the park. Simply being in the vicinity of the park, even briefly, made you feel something, especially when it was abruptly removed. Now imagine if that park were accessible to you and everyone else at all times through a miniature portal to hell in your back pocket, and everyone was talking about it. Even if there was nothing forcing you or influencing you to be near the park other than vicinity, you would still feel the same, especially when you factor in the convenience of access and the peer pressure to indulge. Now sprinkle in a little bit of something to influence you, such as blue light radiation, which keeps you up at night. Exposure to light will do this in general, but blue light is more potent in that regard. Now combine this with all the moving colors and objects on screen, and your brain will react in some way. Anger, joy, anxiety, fear. Your brain has associated an emotion with what it sees and hears, which in turn is associated with the source of the sounds and pictures. Taking that away suddenly would probably be a bit jarring for many, to say the least. But this brief summary of the ills of social media, which have been repeated to death, is only the tip of the iceberg. We haven't even discussed the specific issues with this type of content. That brings us to the next part of this video, which is aspect ratio. Now, before we get into this specifically, we have to cover the human eye a little bit. The human eye has a 150 approximately degree vertical cone of vision and a horizontal view of about 200. But generally speaking, the way you perceive the world is wider than it is tall. Remember the pocket portal to hell I mentioned earlier? Well, regardless of which specific model you have, generally they tend to be rectangular. And this is done so you can hold them in your hand and put them in your pocket. What TikTok does, and what other platforms similar to TikTok do, is take advantage of this shape and makes the UI so that the videos are squished into this aspect ratio. Sandwich that in between a swipe-based UI and an algorithm, as well as accessibility features like double tapping to like and swiping to view comments or holding down to double the speed, and you're set to scroll and consume content for conceivably hours if you want to. Do you really even want to? What if you can't stop? The algorithm has you hooked, even disregarding the previous issues with screen time. Find the content uninteresting? Well, how could you? We have everything here, including literal bells and whistles to keep you engaged. Why would you leave? What of your friends? Will they join you in quitting? Do you want to be the odd one out? Now, this might be a huge issue in and of itself, but how different is it than the entire internet from before, or even now, outside of TikTok? Well, there's one word that could sum up the difference. Effort, whether in searching for or in making and marketing content. Don't get me wrong, content still went viral very quickly and consistently, but it used to actually require some degree of skill or talent, and it took effort as well as being more original, at least in that no one had done it before. Think back to some of the earliest Let's Players and early memes.
Hear anything from anyone. I don't want to do anything. I just need to calmly relax and feel it in the beat of my butt. Oh yes. Oh yes. Oh!
And unlike the aforementioned rectangular swipe-based algorithm, it used to actually give people a choice as to whether to click on it. And when it spread, it was because a bunch of people chose to click on it in their feed, their For You page. There was an actual For You page to begin with, or found it through a search, or because someone sent it to them, which typically was because they found it through the other means. Now granted, people can still do all these things, but it used to be a prerequisite for the content spreading so quickly, and the choice was still ultimately yours. Now, practically the only choice you can make is to do away with the whole thing. A lot of these apps tend to start playing this content with the aforementioned algorithm the second you open them, thus removing the choice. Now to this, you might say, well, if you don't like it, just don't consume the content. And with most other things, that might work, but this time, you really can't. And not because of any law or diction or even incentive necessarily, but because it's literally fucking everywhere. In the wake of COVID-19 and TikTok's somewhat rapid rise to popularity and relevance beforehand, every social media company has decided to throw their hat into the ring and make a bag off of mass-marketed hypnotism. And it's only gotten worse. Instagram Reels, YouTube Shorts, and even Twitter all have their own version of this. Rumble added shorts to their algorithm. That's how entrenched this is, just to give you a picture. Not to mention, as of making this video, YouTube has officially changed their homepage layout on mobile and desktop to include more YouTube Shorts in the top section. This isn't really chance anymore. This is intentional. Everything we just talked about is directly linked or exacerbated because of changes brought about by TikTok. And also, of note, with the rise of AI, it will become easier to make content for this slop heap, as well as it being possible to generate entire faces, voices, art, memes even. Entire personas can be crafted, scripts written, and topics researched, all of which will go into this trough. And to a degree, it has already happened in certain ways. What has happened in front of our eyes is pretty massive, and by the looks of it, it's not great. This is no longer the internet of your dad, or your uncle, or even your older brother. This isn't even a network like would be implied by the net in internet. It's more like a dirty clothes pile, and we just started toying with how to make fabric from nothing. It's like the food machine from Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, except your For You page is being inflated instead of your waistline. In short, we have entered the age of the dung heap, and there are a sea of rats scrambling to the top of a topless pile.